There we go. Hello, everyone. This is Ron Bush with the Information Playground, and we're coming to you with a special guest, our good friend John Lohrentz. First, let's do a little identification. The Information Playground This is for the average person that really doesn't understand what's going on, why the need for all the security, technological advances, things that are important to all of us that live in this day and technological age. We come to you from a number of sources. If you're listening to us on Monday morning at 8 a.m. or Friday afternoon at 1 p.m., you might be tuned in to WVLP. That's an excellent FM radio station that's in Northwest Indiana, headquartered in Valparaiso. They're a great group of people. And I hope that you listen to us on that 103.1 FM, but stream us from their website. It's wvlp.org. It can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. There's a bunch of them. Check us out. The channel is called The Information Playground, and the same is true on YouTube. If you're watching us, The Information Playground. So with all that behind us, I'm Ron Bush. I own Ron Bush Consulting, and we are a cybersecurity company that we go into businesses and do risk assessments, employee training, those kind of things, and basically help business secure themselves, stay safe online. Also limits your liability if there is litigation and you are hacked, which is becoming more and more probable as we go on. Well, my good friend John Lohrentz is all over the place. He's cyber forensics with the Munster Police Department. He teaches at Ivy Tech, and I'm going to let you finish that. I know you teach other places as well.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, Ron. Thanks for having me again, as always. Name's John Lohrentz. I basically started my career with the Munster Police Department. From there, I've been able to join many different cyber groups. One that we do a lot with is Governor Holcomb's group. Ron is still a part of, even though he connects virtually. Yeah. One of the big things about it that has come up a lot recently is cyber learning, or not just learning. Now with the way things are compared to the way things were, how kids are learning online. I have to do reports daily about different COVID-19 stuff. One of the reports, or one of the articles that I added, was a situation that was occurring in southern Indiana, where apparently internet isn't so good. You know, it's been, I don't know, described as spotty to slow to no real high-speed internet in different areas, and it's almost like a blackout. If you're basically lost between the Chicagoland area and Indianapolis. So those students who have to learn online, it looked like that they were going to TV, that they're going to end up having to get their schooling on Channel 24, which they would tune in between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. or 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. depending on time of their class, or their designated time they have to tune in. That seemed a little rough from my standard, because a lot of students that have problems, or problems learning or anything like that, I think they kind of suffer if someone's just going to be basically talking to them. There's no interaction, no anything like that. So I just started looking at how online students are working. Now, again, as Ron mentioned, I do teach at Ivy Tech in Valparaiso. I also teach at Moraine Valley in Illinois. And it's a fantastic online learning at both places. And they use similar yet different packages. They use Canvas or Blackboard. One switched from one to another, and the packages are they can choose how you want the environment to be. You could open things up, you could close things. It's very user friendly. I think it's user friendly for the students. It's not overly intensive on the type of computer you need, and it's not overly intensive on internet usage or speed or anything like that. So I think college students are used to that now. They're used to doing labs online. They're used to researching stuff online. That's part of their curriculum, that they've gone through from high school. And as well as that, they have to sometimes now meet students online, where before they were meeting in, groups, in classroom or outside the classroom, somewhere on campus, somewhere. I think it's more difficult for the younger students, especially for parents who, I'm not saying are hands off, and I'm not saying they're not helping their children do homework. I don't think that they're helping their children connect to school per se. And some of that came out because, like, schools in Chicago, they were ill prepared for this. So parents were not helping students connect with schools. The students were just waiting for something to happen. There's been other high schools that didn't have any type of e-learning solution. And during the time off from class, and a lot of the schools basically had 2 or 3 weeks off, came up with solutions or online solutions, whether or not they were buggy or perfect or anything like that. But they're there. They're working. But it still did not seem, I'm not going to use the word accessible. I'm going to say usefulness or something to keep the kids engaged. Older kids, sure, they have more of a drive for it. And if kids are at home while their parents are working, the parents just put the kids in another room so they don't interrupt their Zoom, WebEx, Blue Jeans, whatever kind of meeting that they're having, or they're getting a babysitter because their kids are normally in school. So some of them, especially if they're essentials, they're not at home. So is the babysitter actually doing something other than giving them something to color or something like that? So I started looking at alternatives, what they could do. And surprisingly, and I'm usually anti big companies like Google, but it looks like Google's got the best one. Google has a online learning platform that allows kids to log in and learn stuff. They get to pick different categories, math, science, English, stuff like that, and help with e-learning. There's a couple of Linux architectures, or I shouldn't say that. I should say operating systems that allow you to do a lot of this at home.
So let's explain first. Linux, again, not everybody listening to this is going to be schooled in all this stuff. Blackboard and Canvas, to go back,
sure. We could.
Are systems that professors, I've used them in the upper levels. I've used Blackboard, not Canvas, but that's used for homework assignments. It's for tests. They can do online labs. They can do online lectures, videotape lectures. There's a host of things you can do through that. One of the popular things that's come about the last few years is the flipped classroom, where the students watch the professor on a recorded lecture, and then the only time they meet is, I don't know, sometimes it's just take tests, sometimes it's to ask questions. It's all different ways. The other thing is, you were talking about Linux. There are several Linux operating systems. I don't know how many there are. There's a bunch of them.
Oh, there's hundreds.
So Linux is what do you want to say, the third operating system people might be familiar with. You've got Windows from Microsoft. You've got Mac OS, or we'll just deal with laptops, Mac OS for Apple. And then you've got Linux. Linux came about by Linus Torvald, I forget the guy's name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there's all different, because it's open source, meaning that everyone can contribute to it. There are all different versions of it. And literally, it's probably the favorite among IT people, because they can interact with it much more. Windows, you're constrained to what Microsoft lets you do, and the same with Apple. So,
and it works on all different types of hardware. So usually a lot of older hardware that may not run Windows, or runs Windows so slow now, you can put a flavor of Linux on it, and it will run fantastically. The resources are far less constrained on the hardware than what Mac or Windows may run on the hardware of the machine.
So you mentioned there was a couple of them that they could use.
Linux was, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You mentioned there was a couple of them that were appropriate for the use you were talking about. Which ones were those?
So what it was is that I started looking for solutions, that kids could do, because there's a lot of e-learning online, and I started looking at ratings and students, and some of them, or I should say a lot of them, came with costs. All of a sudden someone mentioned Ubuntu, edu Ubuntu, like Ubuntu.
Uh-huh.
And for those not familiar with silly Linux names, all of these that I found are no different. The problem is with a couple of these is that they started so long ago, they are not being updated. So hand in hand with as many Linux distros that are out there, some people like certain distros, but they've come to their end of life, just like Windows does, just like Macs do. And
simplify that for everybody. Distros, distribution, it's basically different dialects, if you will, in the different languages. So you've got Ubuntu, you've got Red Hat. I can't remember all of them because I'm not in that world. I don't study.
Yeah, Fedora, Debian, and all these different versions of Linux come off of these basic versions of Linux that have been around for years and years and years. Well, they built these to have tools in them just for educational purposes. So instead of being a pen testing operating system or a networking or server, centered, they're around education, and apparently did a good job. Other than the fact that some of them are discontinued or not supported, they're still being used out there or have grown from them, just like Kali Linux from Backtrack or Red Hat from Fedora or something like that. Another one is called Uber Student, just like, Uber Student. And basically it goes through more advanced and very popular version of the Ubuntu, where it's also built upon Ubuntu and allows a lot of friendly access. You know, early versions of Linux were not graphic driven. They were text driven. And that's why it really was part of more of the IT community over here. In Europe and everywhere like that, that's the #1 operating system. They're very much used to that kind of operating system. Where now they're making these teaching Linux operating systems, if you may, made for younger people. So it is more graphically intense, easy navigation, because there's no real teaching about how a student would learn Linux. So they kind of made it look like Windows. You really couldn't tell the difference. I mean, other than Windows, the logos, and the logos aren't there, that a kid would be very, they would adapt to it very well. And that's what a lot of the reviews are saying. That's why a lot of the parents apparently like using these for those IT parents. The problem is how to get parents involved, how to get non-IT parents involved. Yeah. It's almost like you need like, learning videos or anything like that. So I started looking for those, and there's not really that many out there that are showing people how to use the operating systems and stuff like that. But for the people that are, it's really picking up. There's one called OpenSUSE, SUSE, and it's based on that version of Linux. And that's not only for like primary grades, but that's going into high school and even college. More tools, more involved, but just as simple, so that and it's being updated. So as a grade school child is working with it, they're going to get support for years and be able to use that onto high school and further. A lot of tools come with it. You don't need Office. It's, Open Office is built into them, along with different environments. One of the things that made Google Classroom so good, and jumping back from Linux to the regular websites that were doing it, not only is Google free, not only do they have Google Docs, but now they're working in a virtual classroom setting where they have people there walking you through stuff all free. You just have to create your account for it and add it to your Google or your Gmail account. And there's a lot of ratings on it. You could go and look at them. Out of all the different ones, it's got the most ratings, maybe not the highest score, but the most people that are using it and rating it at the same time.
Fascinating. So when you say that Indiana school system wasn't ready for this, I find that, I've got a son in college. He tells me that most of his profs, actually told me all of his profs, not a one of them know how to use Zoom. As user-friendly as you and I might think it is, a lot of these guys, men and women alike, they haven't had to do it, and they're not there. Some of them may be brilliant, but it's new to them, and some of them aren't ready to adapt to that newness.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle for him. They have, and I know in other schools, because I've got I've got friends who have kids in other schools, other colleges. Some of their all the ones I can think of, their labs have been canceled. They didn't know how to do them online, and so as it turns out, it's a real mess because they've paid for the full year. A lot of them are going to be lucky to I pity the senior in college or in high school, for that matter of fact, because they're not going to get to walk across the stage, and their degree or diploma, as the case may be, is probably pretty shaky. They didn't get that last semester of school. It's just unfortunate for everyone the way it's happened. I'm not minimizing the people that have been affected by the pandemic directly, especially ones that have lost loved ones or those that have died as a result of it. But I think about the poor kid in school. Their last semester, regardless of grade, has been so messed up, and nobody can identify with this. We haven't had that happen before. 1918, where the Spanish flu was a long time ago.
Yes.
So none of us around today probably went through that or remember it very well. So
Yeah, we have some high schools in the area where they're not even doing finals at the end because of how classes ended up online. And I think that's another problem. Um, so say like for ACT, their ACT and SATs, I heard a rumor, and it's just rumor, that they may be taking them at home. So now you're going to have kids cheating. I mean, I think that, and the way to proctor that is going to be very tough, because they could just sit there with another screen, look up the answer, and plop it in. I mean, I have 3 monitors set up. I could look at something, be on one page, and answer my questions here. Uh, and I think college has come to the understanding that that's how college students do it. And I think it's come down to no longer memorization, that you don't have to know something off the top of your head. You need to know where to find it.
mhm.
And I think a good session or a good understanding of that is SANS. When you take any of the SANS certifications, they allow you to bring whatever kind of material you want to, and you could look anything up. You could Google anything like that. Well, I shouldn't say Google, but you get all the books, and you can research it while you're answering your question if you don't know. Now, of course, that slows things down and everything like that. But part of the class is how to find your answer. So they give you the book, but um, there's no appendix. There's no way to understand where anything is in the book. So you have to build that. You have to build to be able to tell yourself where to find the answer. And I think that's what a lot of the e-learning is doing, and allows you to go out into the real world knowing, sure, not everybody knows the answer, but you have the ability to find the answer. And, it's like that everywhere. I mean, even as we're trying to find, a cure for COVID-19, where we're researching and stuff like that. Nobody has the answer, but people know how to research and find possible answers. You know, I don't think small children are already schooled in that way of thinking. They basically are hammering away mathematics at you. And I mean, plus, minus, maybe eventually division, multiplication, and maybe for people, if there's an advanced class in maybe 7th or 8th grade, or you are in some program where you're taking high school classes, where you go into geometry, or something like that, something where a calculator is needed. The students it's more memorization, just like knowing your, how to, your spelling, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head other than spelling, but just facts, that you're just spitting facts out. They want you to know specific events and times, stuff like that. Nothing like high schoolers, and definitely nothing like college, where sure, there's probably individuals out there that can memorize or retain or know something off the top of their head, but it's probably not like that for everybody.
Yeah.
And they have to know how to look it up. um, i think I think doing it this way is going to help children, the younger grades, better and be more acclimated toward it as they get into high school and college, compared to the people in high school and college now that, you know, had to basically jump into that process, which, I mean, I have students that suffer from it because everybody learns differently. They learn better in a classroom environment, but it makes them lazy. So some rather take it online so they could do it at their own pace and slack off because there's no teacher in their face telling them to do something, compared to someone who wants to learn, comes to class, wants the labs, wants hands-on, you know, everything like that. And that's not online. Not for everybody. I mean, some people have a hard time with doing labs online. There's not someone there. Some people work better in think tanks or groups, you know, and when you're in a classroom environment, you know, you could discuss stuff like that with groups. So when someone's got a problem, there's someone there always there with an answer, or someone to assist. And younger age children doing this, watching the TV to try to get this information, someone's probably on there saying, second graders from this school, you have to read this today. You have to read that today. You have this mathematical. Thank you. This grade, you know, and that's probably how it's going to go, because you have to address however many schools in a 2-hour period. They're probably practicing to get it all squeezed in the 2 hours.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think and I think you're right on the mark. Younger kids, everything you learn practically in those younger grades have got to be memorized. You get older and you deduce and you reason through and you think through. But when you start, I mean, you're a clean slate. You have to have the basics in order to do the other stuff later on. So I want to take just a quick break and just re-identify. And when we come back, if you want to give away for people, if they have questions or want to contact you, when we come back, you know, be ready with that. So
Sure.
You're listening to the Information Playground. I'm Ron Bush. I own Ron Bush Consulting. And we are an information management or cybersecurity company. We help other companies stay safe online in the cyber world, if you will. So we underwrite this program for WVLP. WVLP is an excellent community radio station. They are on the FM dial at 103.1, or their website where you can stream this program is wvlp.org. We're on there at 8 a.m., 8 to 9 on Mondays, and we're on Fridays from 1 to 2. We're also available on demand if you want to listen to the podcast. You can find us on all the podcast platforms that I'm aware of. There's eight or nine of them. You can also, and the channel is the Information Playground. And you can also find us on YouTube under the Information Playground. Now, I mentioned my name is Ron Bush and the company is Ron Bush Consulting. I like things simple. So my email, if you have questions or thoughts, is ron@ronbushconsulting.com. So if you'd like to talk to me about the show, if you want to contact the radio station, you're curious about things there, it's info@wvlp.org. And my good friend, John Lohrentz, who is with us from a host of different endeavors. He's got a police department job and a couple of teaching jobs. He's head of NISA, and we'll get to that. How do you want folks to contact you if we got questions?
Sure. So if you have questions about anything cyber normally, or anything like this about what you can do to keep kids safe online, which I'm sure we'll be talking about next, because of all the interaction that they're going to be doing if they're not doing it already. My email address is jlohrentz@munster.org. You could also sign up for one of my classes at Ivy Tech. Sure, why not?
Sounds good. Sounds good. So let's pick that up now. we've been talking about how kids to go with school. Now, most kids today, I think, are probably already on the internet. I know there are a number of homes and school systems are struggling with this where there is no internet. I also know there's a number of homes where there's no devices. Even if they had internet accessibility, they don't have the laptops or the tablets or smartphones to get on the internet. But I think most of the folks listening to us that were on the internet probably do have that.
Yeah.
I know that, I always find it, I don't know, ironic, odd. Um, some of the leaders in the tech movement, Bill Gates for one. Um, uh, I can't think of any of the others right now, but Bill Gates is an excellent example. His kids didn't have tablets and smartphones until they were older. I think Steve Jobs, if I remember correctly, was the same way. Most of us allow our kids to have them earlier.
I think because we're lazy.
Well,
look at it. A lot of people, including family members of my own and friends that I know that have kids, they buy a tablet, and of course, in school, everyone's got to have the same. People latch on to keywords like MacBook or iPhone or something like that, and kids are looking at YouTube videos. So they're basically just using it as a small YouTube portable device.
yeah.
And it entertains us. I'm not saying that we didn't do the same thing, watching cartoons and Sesame Street and stuff like that growing up, but anything on YouTube, it could pop up and say adult material, and it doesn't prevent you from seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's the difference. First off, the TV is designed for entertainment, and tablets may be designed for entertainment as well, and smartphones, but they're also designed as tools. And to give a kid something, you can't determine what you're going. Well, I guess you can today. What do we have? 300 channels. So I guess you can find something on there if you've paid for all those stations. But it's different with a tablet or a phone, because all you have to do is just type in. It's like Genie or the Aladdin and the Genie in the lamp. Was that Aladdin? I don't know. Whoever it was. The Genie in the lamp. You rub the lamp and the Genie comes out. Here you type in the what you want, and it pops up on the screen. And you're right, it can be anything. It used to amaze me. I can remember back when we had 3 networks. We didn't have all this cable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The television stations went off at midnight. And so, you weren't watching anything at 2 in the morning because nobody operated at 2 in the morning. And so don't get me wrong, I'm not getting nostalgic and want to go back to those great old days of yesteryear. I'm not. No. But at the same time, the ability for a kid to get in trouble amazed people would invite people through movies through the years now, through the internet, would invite people into their home through television they would never want in their home in real life. I mean, there's some pretty evil stuff out there.
Especially with all the problems that smart TVs had. I mean, we could go back and look at the cameras that when you plug your TV in and are on, people were hacking that and could see through the camera, or better yet, the manufacturers just watch you through the camera. Yeah. Some of the gaming systems, Xbox, PlayStation, all that, they had camera systems that they had at one time that was part of one of the packages that they since then removed, since a lot of them are children playing. Mm-hmm. I mean, sure, you're going to get your adults that are gaming and stuff like that, but probably in a lot of households, it's going to be a lot of the children playing it.
Yeah.
They create accounts, their faces out there, and that's where you get people creeping in.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else. If you want to know that your network is safe, you make sure that you have protection on it. If you want to make sure your children are safe, you have to make sure that your devices are protected.
So it's even more important today, really, to be with your kids. You can't just give the kid, regardless of age, hand them your iPad and say, here, go entertain yourself, or get out of my face, or go be quiet, whatever it is you say. That's not acceptable. There's an excellent book, and I may have mentioned it to you before. I know I've mentioned it on this program before. It's called The Cyber Effect, and I don't remember the doctor's name. It's a lady, a female PhD in Great Britain, and I've stalled and I can't bring her name up. The Cyber Effect. It's an excellent book. Talks about how the internet has changed us all. Now she takes a chapter or two and talks about gaming and talks about kids on the internet. One of the things she stresses is that what used to be, I don't know that she stresses it, but it's one of the things that I recall from the book. What used to be considered abnormal, because one person would be by themselves, they'd be the only one that would like that. They wouldn't know anybody else. But online, you get hundreds of them that congregate together into this one area, and suddenly what used to be considered abnormal is now normal. Think of the series, The 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, that stuff you wouldn't even talk about in polite company. And here we've got one of the best-selling, I think I read the other day that the only book that's outsold that book is the Bible. You believe that?
Well, people are looking for excitement, and they get it in books and movies and any kind of entertainment.
I'm reminded of the old country western song, "Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places." I mean, to me, that's just sorry, but at the same time, that stuff is available online, regardless of age. There's no way to check, who knows, that may happen one of these days where you put the thing up to your face and it says, oh no, you're 7 years old, you can't do this now. So any kid that picks up any instrument like that, or even if it's their own in some houses, I mean, they can get down there and do anything and go anywhere. And now, what can we do about it? How do we protect our kids on the internet or from the internet?
Yeah. There's a lot of ways, and a lot of, especially for mobile devices and your computer, where you could put parental locks on it. You could put parental locks on specific websites. Yeah, not only can you put the names in, but a lot of these parental locks go out and know of known sites. They have like a list, no different than a white list, of good places to go. They have a black list of where not to go. The problem is that it's an imperfect system. I know that National Geographic gets blocked, and a lot of people look for information for doing reports and stuff like that, and that gets blocked. And that's why a lot of parents don't like that as a solution, because now their child's looking for something, trying to go to a site. Mom, will you unlock this? Because I'm trying to get something and it's locking some site out for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's Google sites, sometimes it's Yahoo sites, sometimes it's, other regular sites. But these, somebody somehow, said that there's something inappropriate on this site and it gets locked down. A lot of those sites are torrent sites. And on that, the child could download anything they want, and it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple to see the problem with the site that they're looking for. All of a sudden, ooh, I found it. Ooh, they got these movies. Oh, they got all kinds of movies, and it's simple to download, simple to watch.
Tell the folks what a torrent site is.
So, torrent sites have been around for a while. Torrent sites are pretty much a site that a person starts for sharing or using P2P or peer-to-peer computers for sharing movies, books, all kinds of stuff. A lot of them are breaking copyright laws. I'm not suggesting for you to go out there and go to these sites, but torrent applications such as uTorrent and stuff like that are used for legitimate things. A lot of companies use that have big files that have to download. It's a lot easier to put it on a torrent and you can download it that way, like operating systems, for example, Linux. They're 2, 3, 4, 5 gigs big, and instead of taking forever to download it, it will be easier to download, and you could stop it and pick it up from where it was through torrents and properly reassemble it on your end to get it to launch. The obviously the bad problem is that it's used for a lot of illegal downloading. And there's a lot of websites out there. When a website gets closed down or they catch the person who's running the site, 3 or 4 sites open up later. You know, it's something that is now a part of every day compared to how it used to be, where it was not everybody. It was just a select few. But as people meet in schools and college and workplaces, they learn about the websites or Google them. They find them when they do a search for just about a movie, and it'll say, hey, download it here. Even YouTube that we're talking about. A lot of people put these movies, music, everything like that on YouTube. And recently they closed down a YouTube ripping site, which would basically copy the YouTube video that you're watching for yourself at home. And a lot of people would put up the movies, but put them up in like 10-minute blocks. So all you have to do is download, you know, what, 20 10-minute blocks, and you have your entire movie.
Wow. So I know you started to talk about limiting sites you can go to. I know routers you can do that, and that'd be the appropriate place to do it for the whole house. And some of them are really good. Again, folks have heard me say this before. I like to update all my equipment every 3 years. Now I don't update everything at the same time.
No.
But I'll update the router and I'll update the laptop, the desktops, and all the equipment that I have. I try to always have new stuff because technology just keeps moving on.
Mm-hmm.
So for one, for the best, the latest and greatest technology, I guess that's what you want to do. But my whole thing is the security of it. If you've got old equipment, you're not going to have the bells and whistles to keep you secure that you will on the newer stuff. Routers, the latest routers, I bought one last year. Man, I can do all that stuff on that router. It takes a little while to go through and sort through and set it up, but everything takes time. So the other thing comes to mind would be for the parent or the guardian to set with their child and go through good computer hygiene. That means they need to know it too, which means they need to seek out programs like this. There's all kinds of them on YouTube. There's podcasts that talk about it. There, one thing about the world we live in today, if it's information you need, there's no reason why you can't find it. It's there. There's lessons and educational videos and podcasts on virtually everything. It's in, you'd think it'd be infinite. I mean, there's just no end to what you can find. What else can people do?
Well, another thing that people do, like you said, with the routers and stuff like that, a lot of companies, and Disney comes to mind, where they have their software router where it can take the children's computer, tablet, phone, whatever, and give them only so much time to the internet until they get their work done, homework, completed, stop playing video games. And as a parent, you could log in and see how much time they've been on, and you could deactivate them, activate them, give them more time, take time away. I think that's good, and puts them into a timeout. But again, like you said, that's the old time of no internet, and you're using a Time Life book or a encyclopedia to find all your information. That's gone.
Yeah.
Um, now it's all about, how quickly you could find it on the internet.
Yeah.
And uh, parents can monitor what they're doing through that too. There's a lot of phone apps. There's a lot of tablet apps that they could get for monitoring, even GPS. So if the parents aren't at home, and the kid, of course, won't leave his phone at home because, they need access to their phone. They take it with, and all of a sudden the parent gets notified that the GPS is down at the 7-Eleven getting a Slurpee. There's a lot of things that can be used to monitor your kids that they don't know about yet, and that's a lot of that has to do with it. Eventually, there's a lot of people out there that create things to turn GPS off, to turn off some of these apps. They know how to work around them. But going back to the best solution is education, talking to your kids, knowing that you could trust them, knowing that they trust you, knowing that they're not creating a bad footprint for themselves on the internet. And a lot of that comes with social media. I mean, there's been so many students coming into the police station because a bunch of parents won't allow their children to have social media accounts, which that's a debate for another time. But one student whose parents don't know, don't care, unaware, not a social media person, allows them to create a Facebook, and now they share that Facebook account with all their friends. So if they want to sign in, they want to look at something, they want friends, they sign in. And then the owner of that account doesn't know what these kids are doing. And that's where you get a lot of your Facebook hacks, because they're typing stuff in, or they're clicking on links, or they're friending people who they don't know. It could be anybody on the web, using to entice kids to be their friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to take a real quick break just to remind folks you're listening to the Information Playground, and you're listening to us, I hope, on WVLP, but if you're not, I hope you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube under the Information Playground. I'm Ron Bush, and you're listening or watching John Lohrentz. So we're into the last 10 minutes or so. We've talked about the school system struggles with online learning, and we didn't really cover that in depth, but we took a swipe at it. I think, this pandemic has caused all of us, I think, to take a look at preparedness. On the business side, I'm pushing with businesses, and I have for years, but now there's I guess there's a receptiveness to it that wasn't there before. A disaster preparedness and recovery, business continuity plans, and of course, information security policies and procedures. Every business ought to have it. Some are required, some of financial services, healthcare, those are required to have those things. Most of them don't. In the healthcare, most of them don't. In the financial services, stockbrokers are very, very good because they've got to be compliant, or the fines are really high. So they tend to take care of that stuff more. But every business ought to have that stuff. That's true throughout life. There are just things that we need to be prepared for. As Americans, we've watched all these disasters happen all over the planet, and our heart goes out to them. Sometimes our money goes out to them to try and help, and help them recover. But we're suddenly, I think, starting to realize we're not immune from that stuff. this pandemic has made all of us believers, and we've got to all be prepared. We don't have enough masks, and all the stuff. NISA, I'd love it if you'd talk a little bit about what NISA is doing in Northwest Indiana, because you guys are doing a great job, and I
Yes.
love the work that you're doing. Talk a little bit about that. You got to tell folks what NISA is.
Sure. NISA, which is Northwest Indiana Information Sharing and Security Alliance. My chief is the president of NISA, and it started basically back in 2008 when we had the flood of Northwest Indiana. It took out Munster, it took out Highland, a lot of different, all the way to Gary, including a lot of the industry. Um, our hospitals, the first floor was underwater. So there's no electricity going in. They got different generators they have to have running. US Steel couldn't get trucks in and out. My chief at the time was just an officer. He was able to get people together to try to band together to help everybody. After the issue, or I shouldn't say the situation, calmed down, a lot of the water receded. People had pumps, pumped out the areas. There were a lot of homes that were still destroyed, and FEMA had to come in. So everyone in the region really never wanted to see this happen again. So they came together and started NISA, which is in full effect today. We basically are running a emergency operations center located on Gary Airport to hand out emergency PPEs, anything that we could help with in the area, from everything from refrigerator trucks to masks to sanitizing gel. Basically, we were given 5,000 gallons worth, I think, maybe I'm wrong on the number, but of sanitizing gel. The problem is it comes in 55-gallon drums. So we're like, well, what do we do with this? You can't just put it in your car. You need the right, way to get it to everybody. So we started bringing it around, and people are like, what are we going to do with the big drum? We need it smaller. So it took a little while, but we found a few people that are bottling it and getting it to us so we could get it out to everybody as needed. It is slowing down. I'm not saying that it's over, but a lot of the donations have slowed down. We received a lot of donations through PayPal, and apparently one of the gentlemen that works at our EOC found Amazon. So if you purchase through Amazon, instead of using just the regular Amazon.com, if you use smile.amazon.com, and a portion of whatever you buy, Amazon will donate to whatever charity you want.
Yeah.
We put ourselves in as a charity and are trying to get the word out. But again, all the big charities are on there. We are a 501c3, and we basically do everything for our people. Our organization has reached out and has grown in numbers over the years. It's a public-private partnership with not just law enforcement and first responders, but big organizations that are looking to help out and keep the area going.
I'm glad you mentioned it. I didn't know that. So that's great. We've got 5 minutes. Any last thoughts? Things I didn't ask you that I should have?
Well, I think the safety of kids online is always important, especially when it comes to video games, where you never know who you're meeting up. I play video games myself. I meet people online. I never know who they are. I never give a whole lot of information about myself. But we had a student of mine who has a small child that met someone online, was like, hey, I have codes for this game. why don't you email me something or email me your information? I'll share that with you. And he's like, oh, well, it costs $10. If you send me $5 through Facebook, and so they connect through Facebook. And so now that person is sending money to the other person. And all of a sudden we realized that that money was up to $100. And my students come to me as, well, what do I do? And I'm like, well, one, your 9-year-old doesn't need to be on Facebook, and he's like, well, he's using my account. And I'm like, well, apparently you need to, address these things.
Yeah.
And a lot of them is education. If the parents don't know what they're doing or laying down ground rules, again, that's probably a whole nother conversation, because of course kids want to rebel. Kids are going to be kids. They don't understand the effect of being online, and the repercussions of it. A lot of kids share photos, with people online, and they think there's somebody that they know, and it's not. Happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's
the
very
best thing for that is education, and sometimes parents don't think about it because it's not something they grew up with.
Yeah.
It's something, that the kids are going to be involved with for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Well, that's words of wisdom, and I think we're going to end it there. Again, folks that want to contact you, John, what's the email for them to contact you?
Sure. My email is jlohrentz@munster.org. Feel free to contact me with any kind of problems that you're having, and we could try to help you resolve them.
Great. And of course, I'm Ron Bush. Contact me, Ron at ronbushconsulting.com. And I want to thank you for being with us today. Keep us in your thoughts and prayers, and we'll do the same for you, listeners. I hope that you found this educational. If you're listening to this on a podcast or YouTube, please subscribe. We'll come to you with new issues as often as we can. And thank you for being with us.
And thanks for having me again, Ron, if I didn't say it already. It's
Thanks,
always
Matt.
a pleasure.
You're always welcome.
Thank you.